Looks like it's your lucky day.
This game makes me want to kill myself. It makes me wish watching paint dry while listening to my grandma lecture me about my taxes was my 9 to 5. I would rather watch the entirety of Friends from start to finish in one sit-in than play this piece of crap ever again. It is that monotonously awful. This game isn't just bad, oh no. This little gem over here is special kind of bad. It is an ultimate culmination of boredom, frustration, and pain. Pure, excruciating pain. It is the type of game that's so abysmal that you literally don't know where to begin discussing its issues because there's just too many to count. So, I'll start off with this, I guess. While Devil May Cry 1 certainly did have many flaws that I went over in my review, it was still a pretty enjoyable game despite its clunkiness. I said that if a few things had been tweaked to the point where it wasn't super obnoxious, it would be a masterpiece. So, its sequel improves upon none of those aspects, and in some cases they're even worse than in the first game. And I'll get to those things later on in my analysis, of course. Before I do that, let me kindly remind you all that this game only took 4 months to develop. But more precisely, those 4 months were spent polishing the game when they brought in Hideaki Itsuno, I think that's how you pronounce it, creator of the franchise, and make sure the damn game was playable. About the prior months of development, what was going on then? To be honest, I have no clue. Okay, according to some sources I just read through, apparently an animation for the Stinner move was all that had been completed up until Itsuno took over. While it is genuinely impressive that he managed to turn a single animation into a playable game in the span of 4 mere months, that playable game is still dog shit nonetheless. But hey, to make up for this bullshit, they gave us the best apology gift in the world with Devil May Cry 3, which I will also review soon, of course. But with everything else that I've said up until now, you may be wondering, do I consider this the worst game ever made? Well, I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll get right to the review already. I've wasted enough time on this damn intro as it is. For the record, I am refusing to hold back on this game. I am going all out and giving it the ass thrashing it so rightfully deserves. And with that being said, downgrades, downgrades, downgrades. Everything in this goddamn game is a downgrade from the first. The combat is downgraded, the camera is downgraded, the boss fights are downgraded, and even the weapon selection is downgraded. In DMC1, you could either wield the Yalistor or the Ifrit and perform tons of unique combos with both weapons, with the Devil Trigger enhancing your moveset as well. That does not exist in this game at all. You get one sword and a few guns. And no, don't give me that but the Mosawis and the Vendetta crap, because they're pretty much just reskins of the Rebellion, not possessing any different attacks or special combos. So, finding and collecting them are totally pointless. I think the properties for both swords are slightly different, but I seriously couldn't find any differences between them. Speaking of swords, the swordplay in this game sucks more than a groupie on a Motley Crue tour bus. The combo system is noticeably less refined and offers even less in terms of combative options. Sure, DMC1 doesn't quite have the chops compared to later titles from the franchise, and I can see why someone would think it's repetitive, but goddamn, at least the combos and enemy design made it a little interesting, where in this game, you get just the basics from the first game and that's about it. You got your basic 1, 2, 3, 4 string, the high time, and the stinner. You don't have those several combos which requires timed button presses anymore. You don't have that badass quick jab thing anymore. You don't have those sweet Devil Trigger attacks anymore. Versatility? No sir, none for me. What you get in terms of combos are, a few extra hits, like one extra hit, achieved by flicking the analog stick in different directions. I'm sorry, but this is such a stupid design choice, and with a barely functioning targeting system and lack of variety in attacks, trying to achieve these so-called combos are redundant and a total waste of time. There's this one combo where you perform this leap and slash thing followed by an uppercut, but the fact that you can easily string together the base combo and the high time makes this whole combo just super pointless. Hell, combining high time with that basic string is much more fluid and flows much better than that particular combo. And speaking of fluidity, this game is some of the clunkiest, most stiff as a dick combat I've ever seen, no joke or exaggeration there. All the animations look janky as hell and feel even worse in action. Successfully pulling off attacks in the first game felt swift, despite the aged controls, where in the sequel, I feel like I'm a rock'em sock'em robot, fighting a bunch of mannequins on ice. The controls couldn't feel any more unnatural and dissatisfying. Hell, even the fucking walking and jumping just feels so off. Okay, this Sinner. This motherfucking Sinner. Can we talk about how hilarious the animation for this Sinner is? Dante deadass looks like he's about to trip over and fall on his ass bone every time he does it. The goddamn attack is so pitiful to look at. Even the sound he makes when he does it sounds depressing. This ain't a Sinner, this is a damn tickler. It's funny yet simultaneously sad how I'm nearly 10 minutes into my script and I haven't even cracked the meat of this shit yet. The very thing that makes this game so notorious in the eyes of Devil May Cry fans and action game fans alike. What am I referring to exactly? That's right, I'm talking about the guns. Ebony and Ivory are pretty much all that you'll ever need to beat a good chunk of this game. Hell, theoretically, you could beat this entire game from start to finish using just your started pistols if you really wanted to. Alright, let's get real here. The term button masher tends to get thrown around left and right by people who don't know a single thing about game design. Games such as Kingdom Hearts 2, God of War, the Arkham games, and, well, Devil May Cry, have all become a victim of this foul and unimaginative term. But, if there were a game this term can be applied to, it would be Sonic Unleashed. Oh wait, did you think I was going to call this a button masher? No. Calling DMC2 a button masher would be generous of me. This is a button holder. Literally all that is required of you to complete pretty much the whole game is to stand in one spot and just hold the shoot button and have the game do all the work for you. I mean, sure, some enemies have attacks that you want to avoid, but for the most part, that's pretty much all you need to do. My god, this game is just so painfully easy. It feels like the game was tailor-made for game journalists. Strategy? Not needed. Combative versatility? Not needed. Thoughtful purchasing of upgrades? Not needed. Though, if you're looking to speed through this miserable experience as quickly as possible, I suggest you pour all of your red orbs into upgrading your guns. Maybe give a few upgrades to your DT gauge as well. On that note, the Devil Trigger in this game is hilariously broken. I do appreciate how your Devil Trigger attacks become insanely powerful once your vitality meter reaches a certain level, but then again, it only perpetuates the sheer simplicity of the game and the frustrating lack of anything even remotely challenging. There are some tougher parts of the game for sure, but there arises another issue. Anything in this game that isn't mind-numbingly basic is agitating as hell. And no, I'm not just refusing to give this game any credit. Just go face a Trimagia boss fight and you try telling me that shit ain't frustrating. Did I pronounce that right? There just doesn't seem to be any signs of solid game design anywhere. You can just tell that the shit was scrapped together and put to market in 4 months. The enemy design, oh boy, talk about some of the weakest, most pathetic enemies imaginable. In order to describe it in the clearest way I can, let me make an analogy for you. Imagine the grunts from the Halo series. You know, the little squirmy guys who do nothing but run away and piss themselves constantly. Imagine those, on easy difficulty, but dumbed down to the point where they were hardly a threat at all. There are enemies who either A, have 1 or 2 attacks that are slow and predictable, B, seemingly don't attack at all, or C, do attack but it's almost like they're drunk and they're aiming for literally anything other than you. Not only that, but most enemies will die in just a few easy hits. It takes no strategy, tactics, or hell, even effort to take out these guys. There's just no sense of challenge or engagement present. Most of this shit just feels like a bad simulation instead of a game that a person with more than 2 functioning brain cells would enjoy. For the record, the marionettes, the first enemy you encounter in DMC 1, are harder to defeat than any of the enemies in this game. And I haven't even gotten to the boss fights yet. And on that note, if you thought the base enemy design was bad, you really haven't seen jack shit. These are, no joke, some of those poorly designed boss battles in history. How bad are they exactly? Let's see, what do we have here? Oh yeah, that's right. How about a boss that uses the exact same attack pattern the entire time? Ooh, how about a boss that literally doesn't even attack you? Ooh, how about a boss that's not even on the fucking screen? Ooh, how about a boss with an absolutely absurd amount of health? Oh wait, that's just all of them. My god, these guys are just nothing but bullet sponges and they take 4 fucking ever to actually kill. Why? Why the hell are these bosses supplied with nearly 3 full bars of health? Makes the fight so unnecessarily grindy and plodding. The completely botched enemy design also making the fights repetitive, too easy and just plain fucking boring. Bosses like Jotagulm, Nephasturis, I don't know, Furitoris, and the aforementioned Trimagia are bad enough, but by far the worst boss in the entire game is the infested Chopper. How did something like this happen? How was this featured in a video game that actually got published by one of gaming's biggest brands? Fuck it. How was this put into a video game in general? I get the development of this game was all over the place, but still, how the hell do you let something like this just slide? I already mentioned how camera shy this damn Chopper was, but did I mention its attack patterns? Well, it does one or two attacks at a time. It moves across the screen so slowly, shooting from its turrets in one specific spot. Doesn't matter if they're standing there or not. Or it fires at twin-sided missiles that can be very easily destroyed. So the lack of engaging attacks is one thing, but that's something that all of the bosses shared besides maybe Bulwark Plutonian, who just so happened to be the best bosses in the game if I had to pick some, ironically enough. But the fact that the Sin is almost always off-screen and too far away for you to attack with your sword, forcing you to just stand there and mash the X button till it pops out is what cements the Infested Chopper as the worst boss in the game. Sure, Trimagia has that exact same issue, but at the very least, you could say that particular fight was at least somewhat interesting and actually, you know, try to attack you instead of being stuck on literal autopilot the entire time. And oh yeah, this brings me to another massive flaw with this game. The camera. Now of course in the first game the camera was easily its biggest flaw, but I mentioned that if it did away with those Resident Evil-esque angles, then everything would be fine and dandy. So what brilliance did Capcom bring to the table for their sequel? Easy. They made it even worse. I don't even have to explain it this time, just fucking look at this shit. Why didn't they just delay this game? Holy fuck, there is no way in hell someone looked at this and went, oh yeah, looks good, put it on the market. But due to the circumstances surrounding this game's development, I'd have to argue that probably wasn't the case at all. Alright, was there something I missed, or did I cover everything that needed my analysis? Let's see here, I covered the dumbed down combat system, the pitiful AI, the shitty boss fights, the ridiculously buffed gunplay, the lack of difficulty, the redundance of the different weapons and combos, the clunky as hell controls, and the god-awful camera. Yep, that about does it. But hold up, there just has to be something about the gameplay that I did enjoy. I mean, every game, no matter how ass-tastic it is, has at least a little fart of enjoyability underneath the pile of rancid shit. Even DMC2 does, like the amulet system for the Devil Sugar. Cool idea, even if it was executed haphazardly. And while the boss fights were pure ass-butt, I will say that I thought Plutonian was okay, as was the final boss of the game. I know, and no. I mean the final boss, not that Argosax bullshit. One small improvement this game has over its predecessor is the level structuring. The first game had way too much of that Easter egg hunt crap that forced you to backtrack throughout the castle in order to find some stupid rock that you placed in some magical orifice that unlocked a door or something. This game, thankfully, has pretty much none of that. Instead, the structure of the game is more linear and focused, even if it is incredibly basic. Despite the controls being significantly worse as well, the acrobatics are better, to be honest. The dodge and wall running animations are much more stylish and in turn, more reflective of Dante's fighting style. Too bad those wall running mechanics hardly ever come in handy and feel like a total waste. Besides the game having slightly better structure and an admittedly interesting amulet concept, this game is literally nothing going for it from a gameplay perspective. Everything about it just blows. Holy shit. How do you manage to fuck up the story even worse than the gameplay? No, I'm serious. The game's story is just as bad as this gameplay, perhaps even worse. Remember when I said that DMC1's story was very lacking and minimal? Well, try multiplying that half-ass factor times a billion. DMC1 has a very minuscule, boring story. DMC2 doesn't even register as a story. I've seen NES games tell a stronger narrative than this. So, what's the main plot of the story? Well, let me warn you ahead of time, as this shit is so complex that your pea-sized brain might not be able to register the sheer ambition of such a story-driven masterpiece. Okay, so there's this guy who is a CEO of some corporation or something who does bad guy things. Dante, being the good guy, has to go stop bad guy from doing bad guy things. Literally the only story thing about this story is that the villain requires 3 item thing whatevers, to become more powerful or something. Dante swaps one of said items with his stupid coin, one of the most eye-rolling, ha, gotcha moments in the story I've seen in a while. Arius, how dumb are you? Really? Are you really this oblivious? Speaking of Arius, he is without a doubt one of the lamest villains I've ever seen in any form of media. Stupid, not threatening, doesn't even attack you, is super oblivious, has no motive outside of her, give me power, and has very questionable voice direction. Okay, serious question here. Does this dude get a different voice actor towards the end of the game? Seriously, if you listen to his first couple of lines, then hear his last few, you'd be asking those same questions. At first, he sounds like your generic, wannabe brooding villain with that lame, deep voice. Then by the latter half of the game,
My dream! My life! I was going to be the king of this world!
King? Yeah. Here's your crown.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. Bosses have no connection to the story at all and are just merely obstacles in your way, nothing more. There is this dude named Bolverk, who, according to the DMC lore, was a rival to Sparta. Yes, I actually had to do some research in order to find that out because this isn't implied at all in the story. Imagine how impactful this fight could have been had the writers not thrown such rich lore potential out of the window. I feel like this game could have had a pretty good story, but due to the fact that this game was obviously rushed, there are several story elements missing, which could have been cutscenes that better explain things, like Arius' ambition, the rivalry with Bolverk, and fleshing out the side characters like Lucia and her mother Mathieu. But unfortunately, as it stands right now, we don't have any of that. Instead, we have a very boring story with very little narrative or direction involved, leaving us with an empty box that's somehow less impactful from the gameplay. Oh, and before I forget, Dante, what happened, man? I get that this characterization in DMC 1 was heavily flawed, mostly at the fault of the game's inconsistent as hell tone, but even with that in mind, you could still say it at least had some sort of personality in that game. Dante in DMC 2 has no personality at all. This is one of the most tone-deaf, boring, and stale as old bread protagonists in fiction.
Whatever.
Instead of that cool, badass dude with a bit of a soft spot that we got in the first game, we get a wet napkin of a character who resembles Shadow the Hedgehog in his worst incarnations. His dialogue is so minimal, and anything that comes out of his mouth is either forced melodrama or the edgiest shit you've ever heard.
Don't speak. Just die.
Dante in this game feels so drastically different compared to all of his other incarnations, you'd swear the dude in this game was a completely different character. I do have a theory that may explain why Dante was so monotone in this game. It sounds stupid, but bear with me here. Dante is suffering from depression following the events of the first game. I mean, he did watch his own brother presumably die right before his very eyes after all. Either that, or he's so bored out of his goddamn mind that he no longer has any patience for anything anymore. You know what? Out of those two theories, I'd argue that the latter was more applicable. Cool design though. One word. Boring. This is such a boring looking game whose graphics have aged like a carton of milk in the summertime. The phenomenal aesthetics and detail present in the first game have been completely tossed aside in favor of having more open spaces that just look so empty and meandering. Every setting in the game is so painfully generic and boring to look at, it's like I'm literally watching paint dry. Although I may have been giving the game too much credit with that analogy, cause when I'm watching paint dry, I can at least see some color. What in the hell is this ugly ass, stupidly mute color palette? This game is filled with so many hideous shades of brown that gives the illusion of the camera being constantly smeared in shit. Every other DMC game has a bright artistic palette that really pops and gives each set their own nice little glow. That does not exist here, as the game's environments are bland as hell, completely devoid of anything even remotely interesting to look at. Also, this HUD. This goddamn boring ass HUD is so incredibly basic and ironically reflective of the gameplay and story. And can I mention one more thing that genuinely bothers me? Something I didn't think a video game could possibly fuck up, but very well does. This game has a problem with its text. Yeah, really, it can't even get text right. Fonts tend to be inconsistent, but that's just a minor issue compared to the enemy names displayed on your HUD. Just look at this spacing. I can't even tell what the hell it's supposed to say sometimes. Something like this would barely register as an actual flaw in just about any other video game, but the fact that this is just another thing to add on to the pile of mishaps in this game, it just becomes all the more excruciating. Visually, this game falls flat in nearly every category imaginable. The color palette is ugly, the environments are bland and way too foggy, the character designs are nothing special outside of Dante, and the textures have aged poorly. But I will give the game some credit, as I just mentioned, Dante's design is sick and is quite possibly the best design he's ever had. I mean, his face doesn't look all that great, but damn, that outfit is so awesome. Why couldn't the other characters look this good? Why couldn't anything else look this good? I spent so much time trying to ground this game's graphics in realism that they forgot to retain the style that the original game had, resulting in a puke-colored smorgasbord of pure banality and emptiness. Undoubtedly one of the best aspects of this entire game, but since this is Devil May Cry we're talking about, that's pretty obvious. While I don't think it's anywhere close to the level of quality as the first, take a shot every time I say something along those lines, it's still very solid, and overall, this soundtrack has a bigger emphasis on metal guitar riffs, as opposed to the atmospheric creepy ambience and soundscapes, which is for better or for worse in a way. For better, these tracks sound a lot more badass as those crunchy new and industrial metal riffs just groove their way into your head and make you feel like such a hard ass. Had the combat actually reflected the tone of the music, it'd be a hell of a lot more immersive, but hey, fun music is still fun music nonetheless. Too bad the combo can follow suit, but for worse, the music can start to feel kinda samey after a while. While the songs are a lot of fun to just jam out to, there's little variety involved. Most, if not all, of the battle theme tracks are the same down-tuned syncopated riffs with techno EBM style drumming and synthesizers. Cool formula, but there's only so much of it I can listen to before I start feeling deja vu. Also, the mixing isn't all that great either. For instance, the drums often sound weak as hell and are buried beneath this wall of angry synthesizers and riffs. Riffs can also tend to sound obnoxiously compressed, almost as if they were from some crappy MIDI the composer found in his garage. And despite how catchy this game's music can be, I can't help but feel like it's run-of-the-mill sometimes. DMC1's battle themes didn't exactly age the best either, but at least you could tell they had someone's signature style to them, while a good chunk of this OSC sounds like stuff you've already heard before, be it from another video game or from a good majority of the music that was around during this time period. It's not exactly the most original sounding stuff in the world. So yeah, the music from this game is quite solid, but the overall soundtrack gets held back by a lack of variety and some occasionally bad sounding production. But hey, at least I've actually said a couple decent things about this game, isn't that just a doozy? Anyway, if you found some godforsaken satisfaction with me highlighting the positive of this game, then, well, you're gonna love the following category. Whoa, wait, guys. Hold on for just 1 second. Drop whatever meaningless task you're doing right now and listen to my words for just a moment. DMC 2, believe it or not, does something better than DMC 1. Granted, it's probably the least important aspects out of the ones I use in my review format, but I digress. One of my biggest complaints with DMC 1 was its lack of content, seeing as it only had one brief story mode and that was it. DMC 2 clears that up quite a bit, as they not only have another playable character, but they have a third one as well. And on top of that, the popular reoccurring minigame known as Bloody Palace made its debut here, of all games. Dante, Lucia, and even Trish are all playable in this game, the latter being unlocked once Dante's story is completed on hard mode. I've never played either of the two ladies' campaigns, since I hear they're much worse than Dante's, if you can believe that. And if that were the case, you would have to pay me in order to play them. But hey, more content is better content, I guess. No fucking is it, what am I even talking about? As shallow as the gameplay may be, having 3 times as much content as its predecessor is always a good thing, and who knows, maybe one of these days I'll actually give the other story modes a shot. Maybe. I'll have a little bit of fun with them. Right. On second thought, there are swimming sections in her story, and I heard that they're even worse than the ones in the first game. Fuck that then. Who the hell would want to play this game again? Who in their right mind is going to look at this and go, hey, all that pain, sick, and boredom, which was borderline tormenting, that I just experienced for the past 3 hours? I want to do it again, and again. I mean, unless you're a complete masochist, I literally have no desire to ever return to this game, unless I'm being forced to via gunpoint. All in all, this game makes me mentally distraught, as it might as well be the vehicle to behind my crippling depression. I just felt nothing when I first played this game, and by the second playthrough, the experience became seriously agonizing. It's just one of those games that doesn't seem to do anything right outside of a few highlights here and there. The combat is shallow and repetitive, offer nothing that is engaging in any way, nothing that is remotely difficult unless it's skinked as all hell. The boss fights blow ass, completely waste such cool ass names. The story lacks so many elements that would have made it more interesting and much like an actual goddamn story. The graphics aged poorly and none of the designs besides Dante caught my eye and just... yeah... Outside of the extra content and admittedly sweet, albeit samey soundtrack, this game just offers nothing. If you're new to Devil May Cry and are wondering whether or not you should skip this one, I say go for it if you truly want the full DMC experience, but if you want to keep your sanity and goodwill intact, then just don't make the same mistake I did, and forget this game's existence and move on to the third installment. Speaking of which, oh yeah bitch, finally we're getting to the meat of what this franchise is all about, hell yeah. Oh man, this game is one hell of a ride and I cannot wait to get started with my review of it. It is going to be a fun one to say the least. Fuck Devil May Cry 2.